For anyone who doesn't know who I am, because obviously you all know who Richard is, I work with Richard across board on several projects, our DeFi project, banking projects. Richard actually taught me while I was at the University of Southampton. I did my master's, and Richard was my supervisor as well for my dissertation. And since then, we've stayed in close contact, and now we work together. So great. So we'll kick off with some easier questions for you, Richard, before we dive into some harder ones. So I guess, first off, what drove you into economics when you were younger?
Well, do you want the real story?
I think everyone would like.
In Japan, they always have the official story and then the real story.
Okay.
Okay, the real story is I had this plan, and I should really say I have this plan, but I had it since I was maybe 16, 17, to become a novelist. And when you read some really good, deep novels, and as I did at the time, I realized, wow, these people have seen the world, they've seen many places, they've met a lot of people, they've experienced a lot of things. It's pointless as a 17, 18, or even 20-year-old to try to write a good novel. So I've got to see the world. So I'm going to study something abroad already, and then study something that allows me to work anywhere. I'm from a medical family, and in those days it was much harder as a medic to move countries because my dad tried, and law is usually bound to one country and so on. So I thought, well, I'll do this economics, whatever it is, and then I can work anywhere. So there you are.
So you weren't actually extremely passionate about economics at the time. It was more for
well, it was my plan to then see the world thanks to my economics work, and then retire early at some stage and just focus on writing novels. I think the timing is, the time is approaching, so maybe but yeah, we'll see.
Get started on it. And are any of your family members involved in economics at all, or are you a stray dog?
Yeah, no, I'm from a medical family, so yeah.
Okay, great.
And the black sheep.
Yeah, you could say that. So why do you use professor in your name, someone asked, instead of sort of doctor?
Well, because I am a professor.
Because
I like what one of my good friends in Japan told me when I wasn't yet professor, and I was just mere chief economist of an investment bank in Tokyo. And he said, no, you've got to become professor, because you see, when you then engaged in debates and argument, what you say will have more weight, because the professor is the argument.
I see. Yeah.
Now, of course, there's lots of professors that talk a lot of rubbish. So I guess, this is maybe truer in the natural sciences, when there's a scientific research methodology being adopted. But that's one of the features that I've adopted in my work, that I decided to do something quite radical for economics, and it is almost blasphemy, heresy, namely to adopt the scientific research method, because I believe that there's no good reason why we should not use the scientific research method also in economics. Obviously, that's a shocking idea, but I've practiced it, and yeah, most economists are therefore quite horrified by my work, but there you go.
And in fact, that's probably why we got along quite well, because I came over from chemistry, so from a science background, and so we related quite well when I was learning it from you, rather than just being told to assume things were correct, which is actually, funnily enough, what one of the other lecturers said to me, is that I had to assume things were correct, and I didn't appreciate that. So you're not going to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Peterson, then, who disagrees with the university structure and how professors are these days sort of pushing things on students and the negative connotations with it. You're not going to follow in that footsteps and drop the professor.
Well, no, I mean, I do appreciate criticism, and certainly we need to take a critical view of almost anything, including universities and how they operate. And so I can understand that there's a lot of criticism, and in many departments and in many universities, there are very unscientific views that are being pushed. onto students, whereas I always thought I should give them the facts and the tools, obviously, the tools, and then also teach them how to think critically for themselves. And as you do that, then let them come to their own conclusions. Obviously, I have my views, but they're visible. But the key thing is to learn critical thinking, in my view.
No, that's good. That's good. And why is there so much obfuscation then around who dominates the global finance space in the world? Why do you think that is?
So you're talking now about the actual reality in global finance, not academia, right?
Yeah, we've moved over now from academia
Okay.
to more interesting stuff.
Okay. Well, that's it's very, very obvious that if you have a lot of power, you want to keep that power usually, and then the best thing is to hide the power, because if it's not even recognized who has the power, then hey, they can't take it from you. So that's it's a very fundamental strategy to do that.
It's true, and I guess as well, everyone wants to show off as well. So you'll have some people displaying more power than they've actually got, which complicates things further.
Right, and usually those who do the showing off, turns out they're PR people. They don't actually have that much power. They're just hired puppets. But I mean, you see them a lot on television. So some people wrongly think they must have a lot of power, but it's better for those who have the real power not to appear too often on television, I suppose.
Let's not talk about governments then. Let's not get into that space. So in your opinion then, sort of across the world, who do you think the main leader is at the moment?
Main leader in what?
In the sort of dominating global finance, their economy.
Well, it's quite obvious that, and that's one of the things that's well recognized, and it's not really being denied, fortunately, is that it's the central banks, the central planners at the central banks, because we've witnessed this over the last 40 years or so, that increasingly their powers have been strengthened and further increased. They've been given more and more powers and more things to do, while at the same time they've been made independent and essentially practically unaccountable to democratically elected assemblies. And at the same time, we've reduced the powers of governments through deregulation, liberalization, and privatization. Excuse me.
No worries. So on that subject then, when the sort of ECB strays from their main sort of mandate, if you like, and you've already said they're sort of unaccountable anyway, and that's what one of the sort of audience members was asking about, accountability. Who is reviewing it? Who is challenging what they're up to, apart from the public and yourself? Is there anybody?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm not really challenging it, and the public is not either, because we wouldn't break the laws. The law says that it's illegal to criticize the ECB. Do you realize that? It's in the Lisbon Treaty, and originally was in the Maastricht Treaty. It was originally paragraph 107, then it became 108, I think, which says that the attempt to influence the ECB in any way, and here I would add in brackets, such as through good arguments and facts and data and convincing analysis, is illegal according to these treaties. So wow. So of course, certainly we wouldn't engage in such an exercise, because we stay on the right side of the law, don't we?
Which sounds very much like a dictatorship when you can't even speak out against them.
Yes, very much, precisely. That's what it looks like, doesn't it? And that was before they introduced far more dictatorial measures, like in the last few years, or the last year. So that was actually formulated in 1993, but they do this. They did this in a very clever way, as they always do in the EU. That it was written in the 80s and early 90s, and then passed in 1992 and 1993. But wouldn't essentially come into effect until 10 years later. And so that's why people at the time thought, well, it doesn't matter, it's in 10 years time, so what, we don't care. That's how you do it.